and welcome to the Wine Access Unfiltered podcast. As you can probably see, I am not in my, normal home right now. I kind of wish this were my normal home. But I am here at the World of Pinot Noir in Santa Barbara. I'm very excited. It's my third time back here, and I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Julia Coney, to discuss all things Pinot?
A lot of things Pinot.
A lot of things Pinot.
Yes.
There's more to Pinot than I think people realize.
No, because if you like champagne, there's Pinot Noir.
Thank you.
Right?
This is why I brought you on.
Yeah, and so, but for me, Pinot is just so versatile. I think where it is, as wine people, we're always like, is it site specific? But also too, is just, it can be bold, it can be soft, it can be light. And I think sometimes people people who like heavier wines don't always think that Pinot can be heavy. But, I've tasted some 14.5% Pinot Noirs. They can get up there.
They can muscle up.
They can muscle up.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too. And I just think they're a great entryway. And I also think food friendly wise.
Yeah.
Pinot Noir just goes with a lot of things. You don't have to really think about it.
First and foremost, I feel very rude for not having...
My glass is empty,
Your
Amanda.
glass is empty.
You have one job.
Technically I have two, but... fair. We are drinking Pinot Noir, maybe from a region that people didn't realize produces Pinot Noir, because it's so often thought of as a Sauvignon Blanc producing region, but we are actually drinking a Pinot Noir from New Zealand. And I'm always reminded when I come to World of Pinot that there really is a world of Pinot.
A world of Pinot Noir.
Yeah, it's aptly titled. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
I love this. This is so fun. Right?
Pinot has perfume. And I love saying that it's like the perfume of Pinot Noir. And, I used to work in beauty. So anytime I associate Pinot Noir, I'm always trying to do a fragrance to kind of like think about it, think about how fragrant it is. And it's one of those things that I think a lot of times when people have Pinot Noir, is one of those you just want to keep smelling. In the glass, you want to just keep smelling Pinot Noir. Like it's not like, yes, you want to drink it, but it changes so fast, and it's so varied.
It is so varied. I'm doing this blind tasting seminar tomorrow, and I have like a list of things that I pick up when I taste Pinot. Are there specific markers like within the perfume world that you think really live within Pinot Noir?
I think rose, jasmine.
Oh yeah.
Honeysuckle.
Yeah.
Like any of those beautiful aromatic flowers.
Yeah.
Sometimes chamomile. And that's like a distinct difference between that and like rose. But there's also, when we think of these, we have to think, was it steamed flower? Was it pressed? All these different ways. And so it's not just like rose.
So a few months ago, I was doing a seminar in Del Mar on Pyramid Valley, which is another big New Zealand Pinot Noir producer. And I had really never experienced Pinot Noir from New Zealand in that way. It's very site specific. And I was like, my interest is officially peaked in New Zealand Pinot. Like I knew people were producing it. I knew it was kind of a thing. And so when we had the opportunity to include Dog Point, I was like, this is a perfect way to showcase New Zealand Pinot Noir, which to me doesn't, like we're in California, right?
Yes.
And we're in Santa Barbara, which is a great region for Pinot Noir. And by the way, in case anyone's wondering what this whole episode is on Pinot Noir, if you're wondering where we're going with this.
Yes.
And all the different ways that it's produced and all the different places that it's produced. But what I found with like the New Zealand Pinot, I don't know if you find this to be the case as well, is like it kind of splits a weird difference between Old World and New World.
It's kind of like right in the middle for me.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's also where in New Zealand, right, there's a central Otago way of having, Pinot Noir. And they have, we're talking also ocean, coastal, and then they get a lot of sun, depends on time of the year and everything like that. But for me, when I think of like New Zealand, I think there is this soft elegance about them that it's also not trying to be old world. It's not trying, they're not trying to say,
No.
It's like Burgundy, or it's like the New World. It is just on its own.
Yeah.
And it's distinct. If you drink a lot of it, you have to like kind of really get out there. And I know when, like you said, when people think of New Zealand, they usually think of another grape all the time, but I highly recommend people need to drink a lot more New Zealand Pinot Noir.
I agree. And honestly, it's such a good value. Even the ones that are being produced at like the super, super top level are not outrageously expensive, especially when you think of Burgundy, which, for those of you who are maybe less familiar with Pinot Noir, if you think of like the motherland of Pinot, it's Burgundy.
Yes.
And then we think of all the other places that it's produced. So You mentioned champagne.
Yes.
Which everyone forgets that it's produced in it's grown like really well in Champagne.
Yes,
and
it
you've
is.
been there, so you've seen it.
Yes, and I just think but also we're talking a different soil, right? Just kind of like basically chalk. That's all you're really talking about there. But then, when you can get into like the geeky part of it, like the soil and I call it dirt. And then, everybody's like, oh, the terroir. And I'm like, wind, dirt, area, geography. But to me, it's one of those, like, I'm always thinking of food pairings.
Yeah.
When I always think of wine, I think of pairings. This wine, it can go with a steak.
Yeah.
It could go with fish. It could go with vegetables.
Yes.
But it's also go with barbecue potato chips, which...
I'm sorry, what?
Barbecue potato chips.
Stop it.
No, seriously, think about
Really?
it. Yeah. Because all barbecue potato chips are not created equal. I don't mean a mesquite barbecue. I mean just a regular plain barbecue chip because it has a little sweetness to it.
Okay, we're officially trying it.
Yeah, we got it. Think about
Before the end of this trip, I'm trying a barbecue potato chip in Pinot Noir.
a plain in Pinot Noir. You never had it? Oh my God, it's life changing.
I know, and I love chips and wine. I just have never had.
Because most people, when they think of like chips and pairing, they always think of bubbles. And I'm talking still wine.
That's fair.
They think of bubbles, but the grape is manifesting the same because barbecue chips have this like slight sweetness.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're totally. I can see it. I can picture it now, but like it would not have been the thing that I think of first.
What would you think of first?
I don't know. I just don't think of pairing. Like I think of like a Dr. Pepper. I don't know, but I guess like if you're thinking Dr. Pepper, which is a little bit more cherry flavored,
yes,
it makes perfect sense why Pinot Noir would work.
Because we always
You're a genius, Julia. Of course.
I like snacks. I mean, who doesn't like snacks, right? And so you think about like these elegant wines and how, they're going to change over the time. And one of the things about why we work in wine is that it's constantly changing, it's ever evolving. And I don't mean just because climate change. I mean just you're changing and you're evolving and your palate evolves. So the thing about Pinot Noir is like try it from different places. And I think wine people, in general, people who drink wine, we just get kind of complacent. Like, I like this wine, so I'm only having this wine, and I know I like it. And the key is to, like, discovery is try something new.
Well, that brings up a good point because one of the things I hear a lot from people, or maybe I have thought myself, is like Pinot Noir is one of those grapes that I think is thought of as a wine geeky grape. Like, you have to kind of geek out about it to appreciate it. And I'm not so sure that's true. And like I said, it's produced in so many different places. So if you were starting off in the wine world, like cold, and I know like me, like, wine was not something that I grew up with.
I didn't either.
And I remember being served Burgundy, like very early into my career. Yes, and I didn't like it. I was like, this is like tart, like I don't get it. It was young Burgundy.
Okay.
And I just was like, I don't understand, like this isn't for me. But I found that California Pinot, like Russian River Valley, Sonoma Pinot, like that was more my jam. Where do you think someone should start?
I honestly think they should start in Sonoma Coast.
I agree.
I think they should start in Sonoma, start in California, and just say, okay, and look up the different AVAs, kind of like, okay, I had Russian River, I'm doing Sonoma Coast, like, what's the difference of these two? Like, okay, what makes me like this one now, right? Because sometimes I also think it's a mood. Wine is a mood, and it depends on also who you're drinking with, right?
We are moody.
And we're moody, right? And so who are you drinking with, and what are you having, and like, where are you in that? And I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
And then as you evolve, because really, Burgundy is like, I understand why people geek out about Burgundy, but everybody's not going to start there. And it takes, to me, a few years of really understanding where you are on your Pinot Noir journey, right? And I understand why, Burgundy is like I call it the Psalm thing. And I'm not a Psalm. Yeah. So for me, I look at it like, what is my entry point?
Yeah.
Where do I start? I think you can still give value, right? And then go from there. Because I think sometimes there's a barrier to entry sometime in Burgundy.
Especially, yes, with Burgundy for
with
sure.
really great Burgundy and everything like that. But to me, you start in California and then you say, okay, but where else are they doing it, right? In California.
Right.
Central Coast, right? Where in Central Coast? Are we talking Santa Lucia Highlands, Santa Maria? And then you can kind of geek out. And you can really stay in Pinot Noir in California for a few months.
Totally.
And then kind of like,
then venture.
And then venture out, right?
No, I agree with you. I think it's a good point because we had Hannah Chamberlain on the podcast, and I think the last episode, and I was asking her, like, if you were to start someone on a cocktail, any cocktail, what would it be? And she said a sour, and she was like, maybe like a margarita, because she was like, you can play up or play down, but it's a good place to start. And I think you're right with the Sonoma thing, like, it's a good place to start in that you're gonna get specificity of terroir, right?
Yes.
Dirt. But then you can say like, I want more of this or less of that. And if you want more of that fruit, then you start heading towards warmer climates. You start moving inland. If you want something that's more acid driven, more lifted, more bright, then you start reaching towards the cooler climates. But I think you're right in that Burgundy, not the place to start.
No, I think you start in California, then you go to Oregon, then you go to Burgundy. I think you kind of, because once you like, and we're talking like I think like my wine journey, right? And my wine journey is very different. I didn't grow up like you. I didn't grow up with wine, and it took me kind of like from drinking Napa, you know, in the 90s, which was very different than it is now. But then now I'm just like, I'm really into Pinots, right? And and for me, it is, I think it's an easy gateway to have like holiday, when you think of parties, you can buy one red wine.
Yes.
You don't have to really kind of go like, oh, I need this kind of red and this kind of red. And this, it's just like, just grab a Pinot and just be fun and be done.
Yeah, I mean, unless like, I don't know about you, but when I'm throwing a party, like I don't want to be bothered with someone asking, no offense to anyone who's asking me questions about wine, but like, I don't really want to talk about it. Like,
no, you don't want to talk about it. You just want to have a glass of wine and drink.
I just like want to pour it and like have a great time. Like the wine is there as a supporting character. So for party purposes, I think Pinot is a great party wine. I think Côte d'Aron's a great party wine. They kind of fit that, like they're light, they're usually soft. You can kind of play them up and kind of play them down. They work with a lot of things, but yeah, definitely lean in like the New World side of things. We haven't talked about South America, which I feel like, or Australia for that matter. And I'm sure Mark Davidson is around here somewhere very pissed off that we've talked about New Zealand and not about Australia.
No, but I think when we think of like the New World and you're going, and that's the fun part of wine, right? Yeah. Is saying, okay, I'm starting here, and I still have my wine journal notes from like the 90s when I was learning wine.
Do you really?
So going back, it's like reading those, it's kind of like reading your diaries from like a young adult, but kind of seeing the evolution of my journey, like where is it and what am I drinking now and how do I feel about that? And so for me, like I drink Pinot year round, and I'm not, and you know, but also thinking like, okay, we have rosé season coming up soon, right? And everybody,
Thank God.
I drink rosé year round, and a lot of like Pinot Noir rosé that's really coming out of a lot of places is just divine, right? I also like to save it for holiday because holiday has all these weird flavors when everybody's getting together. It's like a barbecue, right? Somebody makes a weird potato salad, somebody, you know, Kansas City style barbecue, then there's Texas style barbecue, then there's Memphis. It's all these different things.
You know your barbecue. This is very impressive. This is a podcast that evolved in a different place. I like
the reason why, because barbecue was my first entry to wine. That was the pairing. Texas barbecue in Napa Valley Cabernet.
Wait, I didn't know this.
Yeah, in 1999. That's how I got a wine pairing. It was, and so for me, I think about how we eat as part of like also how we drink, because usually I am drinking and snacking or eating with my wine. And so I'm always coming from that like perspective of, does this also go with my Chipotle bowl? Does it go with my sweet green salad? All these fast casual places that a lot of people eat, right? In a lot of different places around the country. How do we have just a wine to try? And so for me, I always tell people, Pinot Noir, you can go there easily for a red.
I like that. I also like the idea of having it with a Chipotle bowl.
Yeah, I mean, are you doing barbecue? Are you doing grilled chicken? Are you doing when they have like the limited beef? Like, where does it go? You only need one wine.
So, yeah.
If you think you only need Pinot.
You only need Pinot. It's so funny. There was another podcast episode that we did, and I was thinking about it because we were talking about Burgundy. I was with Lex Nicoletta, who's the coastal grandmother, and she was talking about Burgundy, and she was like, it's sort of like Chipotle roulette, and that...
Oh, that's a good one.
You know where I'm going with
this.
Yes. And that like Burgundy, like when it hits. But like sometimes you can go like 4 times with like a mediocre, even like not a great bottle, in the way that Chipotle, when it hits. But sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes you go to, you know, it depends on who's throwing those ingredients in that bowl together. It's like, yes, and then sometimes you go like, not today.
Not today.
No, it's not.
The wrap was not wrapping.
The wrap is not wrapping. So I like that idea about Burgundy though.
Yeah, I do too. And this wine, it gives me actually, like, as we're sitting here, by the way, we're sitting, like yards from the ocean.
From the ocean.
So you can kind of smell like the sea breeze here. This does kind of smell a little like Santa Barbara Pinot in a weird way. Like, you know, like Santa Barbara Pinot sometimes has that like seaweedy umami thing going on.
Yeah, but I like that though.
I do too.
Okay,
Yeah. No, I think it's a good thing.
But also too, are you getting like a little bit of like pencil, like a little bit of like flint on that, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm looking for aromas that kind of like I can relate to.
Totally.
And sometimes like, not just like the geeky part like of that, but I'm thinking like when I was of the age in school, we didn't have electric pencil sharpeners. We had you had to go up to the wall and crank it. Right. That's what I think when I think of pencil shavings and people talk about that. I literally think of going and you just so happy and you do that to the pencil. Yeah. And that's what I think about.
Oh, because there is like a slight sweetness to it.
Yes.
Yeah. No, you're right. What's interesting is like this, it has, and this is what I love about Pinot Noir, it really does take on place probably better than any other grape. Yes. And so this has elements of so many different places, I think, in it, in that it has the Santa Barbara seaweed thing going on, but it doesn't quite have that, the ripe, like that, you know, they call it refrigerated sunlight here, right? That, so you have all the ripe smelling things, but you don't quite get the ripeness that you associate with California. And I think this has that, but not the refrigerated sunlight thing. It has those pencil shavings.
It has the pencil shavings.
Like, these weird savory things that we don't associate.
Have you been to like the Middle East and everything like that? And okay, so in the Middle East, you have all this like, think about rose petals, right? And all this dried roses and hibiscus flowers.
Yes.
Right? And they're in the teas and they're in the drinks. And to me, hibiscus has that, you know, is it concentrated or is it kind of light? And I'm getting, like, for me, I think about hibiscus and rose a lot in Pinot Noir. And kind of like if you think about those teas, like, you know, that everybody.
Oh, totally.
But also, if you went to Marrakesh and had hibiscus, it's totally different, right?
Right. So and again, like, it's funny, like, we talk about cherry, we talk about hibiscus, we talk about these things, but then we have to also sort of qualitatively talk about how even those can be perceived, right?
Yeah.
Like a cherry is not a cherry is not a cherry.
Yeah, but okay. So if I'm going to say cherry for this, I'm going to say Rainier cherry.
Okay.
Not red cherry.
See, you always make me hungry.
I go to the grocery store and I'm the person like buying fruit to go home just to smell, because when I talk about when you know, people can kind of really understand, I think through food, easier than just kind of me like, I can geek out with the best of them, but I'm just always trying to be relatable to the consumer and how I talk about wine so they can go, oh, okay, I can understand that. Yeah. And so also think about like how we now eat, right? Yeah. Everything, you know, we eat, most people I know eat high and low. Yeah. Right? Totally. And also, does this go with pizza? Like we were talking about pizza earlier, like, does it go with pizza? And so I'm always thinking about wine in that way, like the elegance. So if you want to like talk about, you know, the aromatics and all that, but also if you want to tell me it goes with something simple.
What's the best high-low that you can think of?
Right now?
Yeah.
Okay. You're going to be cracking up. Okay. So Pepperidge Farm has a goldfish, right? Yeah. But they have a Frank's Red Hot one. Red hot sauce, Frank's hot sauce one. Okay. Think about this, because Frank's Red Hot, like hot sauce is not hot. It has a slightly sweet note. Yeah. But then the cheddar. So think about the cheddar with the hot sauce.
It's like buffalo chicken dip.
Yes.
Yes.
It's buffalo chicken dip.
Yes.
Or buffalo wings. Like if you had buffalo wings with this.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it. I also think goldfish are a highly underrated wine.
It's a great snack, man. Like, and if you want to go to, if you want to do organic, you can go, Annie's and all that. But I'm just saying, when I had and the reason why is I go to the snack aisle. Yeah. And when I do a lot of consumer events, I always have a snack pairing that throws everybody off. Yeah. And goldfish throws everyone off because they're not expecting it.
Right. Yeah. I'm 2 years running, I think now, where in Aspen, I always order huge boxes of the like snackable goldfish. Yes. And I just pass them out because I find that, one, if you don't have a snack when you're drinking wine, especially you've done the Aspen seminars, like it's a lot of wine, it's a lot of everything, and usually mine are in the morning. And I just feel like you need to like wake your palate up, like goldfish.
Wakes your palate up.
Wakes your palate. It also like brings you back to your childhood, and I find it kind of like calms people down a little bit.
It also too, makes wine not as serious if I'm handing you a package of goldfish, because you're gonna go, what? Yeah. Like you have to stop and go, did she just give me a package of gold? Yeah. And to try. And so from there that's when I tell people, like, what do you like to eat? Yeah. And I think like there are some wines, like this wine is what I call a sipping Pinot Noir. Yeah. You do not have to have food to actually enjoy this wine, but some Pinots, I really think Burgundy, you need some food. I think you really need food going into Burgundy. Like,
some, like stinky cheese or something. Yeah. Speaking of Burgundy, I want to talk about champagne. Mm-hmm. glanced over it. And your whole seminar is on sparkling.
On sparkling.
At the World of Pinot.
At the World of Pinot.
Yeah. Okay, so talk about, you've been to Champagne, you know Champagne better than I ever will, because I've been there a million times. Talk about Pinot Noir in Champagne and like what people need to understand about it.
Well, I think you have to understand where the Pinot is coming from too, right? If you're, a lot of times people just drink the same type of champagne and they know rosé really has, major Pinot Noir in it. But when it's blended with Chardonnay, it actually tastes, the champagne is like totally different. So where are we getting the Pinot from, and also how rich it is, right? And so because Champagne has all these like site specific, right? I tell people try rosé champagne from places you wouldn't like producers you wouldn't normally think about, right? So if you're doing IE, right, and you having like a Lallier rosé, that is a totally different Pinot Noir than if you're having that from Ambonnet.
Okay.
Because just where it is in Champagne.
Right.
But it's also like, think about like, Tour Sermon where like Laurent Perrier is. Like, in that rose, that's totally different.
Okay. But like, why rosé specifically? Like, why not Blanc de Noir?
I think because honestly, I think people just identify better with rosé. Okay. I just think it's a consumer thing to identify, and then you can go Blanc de Noir, which depends on who you're doing. There may be a little more Meunier in it, right? And then that's a whole different conversation. But I think if you just start with rosé, you can move to Blanc de Noir. But I think because it's so recognizable, people love rosé. I mean, rosé, like, for a long time, there's been so much bad rosé coming on the market. And now I think we're back to a place there's a lot of really, really great rosé. And for Champagne, I think people always really focus on Blanc de Blanc because they do a lot of Chardonnay focus. But I think when you get a Pinot Noir dominant rosé mixed with a little, I think it's just, it makes you think about things.
I agree. I think there's like more of a, if you're someone that likes a lot of precision or even like floral tones or fruitiness, like I think that's a Blanc de Noir is something to look at. So what are you talking about tomorrow in your seminar? What's the focus of everything? So
it's sparkling from all over the world, and not only but where and how they differ, right? How does California sparkling made, they're all made in the Champagne method. So how is that not like, because most people, and this is what I found, if you didn't see the bottle that says Champagne and I poured you a glass, you really don't know the difference.
Fair.
It takes a lot of people who drink a lot of champagne to kind of really know the difference. Yeah. But when you, at the core, how beautiful is this wine, right? So this sparkling, like, where is it coming from? Especially when we have Blanc de Noir in the mix of this, and we have rosé and Blanc de Blanc. Also, is winemaking styles. Yeah. What did they decide to do? Like, how long on the lees did they decide to leave this wine? Because that's also the thing, the aging of Champagne. How many vintages did they put in one bottle? Because a lot of times people don't realize, unless it's a vintage champagne, it's a blend of vintages, right? What was that percentage? What was those years like? Like how, and so it's focusing just really on understanding sparkling wine and I love sparkling wine.
I know you do.
I love it. It's food friendly.
Yes.
A lot of people, you get happy when you hear pop. Even though we try to make a hiss as the professionals.
I've actually reverted back to just having fun with it.
Yeah, having fun, right? And so it is showcasing the breadth of bubbles. Yeah. And also we drink bubbles at 9:30 in the morning. How can you not be happy?
That's a little too late for me.
Well, bubbles bring the party.
They really do.
They do.
You go to Champagne a lot, and I know you host a lot of sparkling trips. What is the most surprising thing for people if they've never been there before? How
the growers are really in charge. Like the houses rely on the growers. The growers have so much prestige, and I know we're in a culture of labels, right? And I only drink this. I get a lot of people on my trips sometimes, they're like, I only drink this. And then when we take them to different growers and understand that grower grows in the negociants, then we have a party. And they're shocked because they didn't know about the grower, and they meet growers. You actually meet somebody who grows the grapes. It's a different perspective. It's a totally different perspective. I think that's true of any wine region, but I think it's especially true of Champagne, where you have a very interesting setup in that
most of the producers are not growing their own grapes there.
Most of the producers.
That is not the case.
That's not the case.
Most wine producing regions.
Exactly. And so these growers are champions of that region. And when they taste house styles, like that's the thing about sparkling, even with, when you, because all champagne is just like all wine, it doesn't taste the same. But if they're trying to make that same wine taste the exact same every year,
right.
how hard that has to be.
Right.
I mean, the palate has to be crazy. I mean, to know that every year you get a bottle from a major house, pretty much going to taste the same.
Yeah.
It's not going to change.
It's so impressive. It blows my mind every time. And then even to blend as many, like even if you're not making a consistent NV, right?
Yes.
And you're blending across, multiple different growers, right? Because you didn't grow those own grapes.
Yes.
Or growing your own grapes. Like that's an incredible thing. I was talking to, who I'm sure you met before, Richard Defoy.
Yes.
Who's the former chef de cave at Dom Perignon. And he makes sake now. And I was like, what's interesting for you? And he was like, my favorite part of winemaking has always been the blending process.
The blending is where it's at in Champagne.
Yeah.
And I think that's the region where blending is magic.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about tomorrow, like how blending and also how hard it is to make bubbles. Bubbles are really hard to make.
Yeah.
Really good bubbles are really hard to make.
And time intensive.
Time intensive, laborious,
Yeah.
right? It's like, how do you riddle, right? The whole are you doing hand riddling, gyro palettes, like all of that to go in to lay something down.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, let's hope half our stuff doesn't explode.
Yeah. No, it's so true. You're like, well, fingers crossed, this all works.
This all works.
Is kind of a science experiment every time.
Every time you make it. And so, yeah.
This is, what I love about Pinot? It changes so much.
Yes. That's why people that's why I call it the perfume of Pinot. It's the reason why it's like fragrance, right?
Yeah.
You put it on in the morning and you go out about your day.
Yeah.
And as your body changes, as the body changes, the perfume smells different from morning to night. So Pinot does the same.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes if you're really enjoying a glass of wine, you really want to drink it. But I encourage you, if you're tasting Pinot, to let it sit for a minute. Like go back to it and see how it's evolving, how is it changing over time in the glass.
Well, this is also why we drink it in wider glasses.
Wider glasses.
So, something like if you're not watching this, like something that has a wider base and that sort of tapers up to the top so that all of the aromas are you're able to smell across, but it's capturing some of the aromas as well. Yes. So aromatically, it's going to change.
Aromatically, it's going to change.
You don't need to decant it.
No.
But let it breathe in the glass and let it just gently unfold.
Also to just open the bottle earlier.
Yeah.
I always tell people just open the bottle earlier, let it sit out for a second, and then, I like to do 15, 20 minutes and then actually pour it, taste, and then pour a little more and then let that evolve and let that evolve.
Yeah.
And just see how, such a living, beautiful thing that we all enjoy, how Pinot in the right glass. Glasses are important. I know sometimes, why people geek out about them a lot. And we geek out for a reason because a glass will change that wine so dramatically. And if you can't invest in them, I always say try to invest in a Pinot glass.
Yeah.
And also when you have bubbles, if you have Pinot Noir base bubbly, put it in a Pinot glass. Put it in a Pinot glass. It's going to be totally different than our universal glass.
Yeah.
We don't use flutes, but
Correct.
If you have a universal white wine glass, but you're drinking rosé, I encourage people to put it in a Pinot glass.
No, I think you're so right. It's funny. Michel Rolland used to come into press, and he's if you're not familiar with him, he's a very famous winemaking consultant, and he would always order a great bottle of champagne, really, really good. But he always insisted on having it in a Burgundy glass.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
For that reason.
Yeah. This is changing, and I love that. I want to slightly switch gears because I think we're going to be tasting a whole bunch of different Pinots inside this current tasting later. Is there any region that you're very excited about tasting, either today or just in general, Pinot from?
Argentina. I think Argentina Pinot Noir is so different because you have to switch your mindset of only thinking about Malbec.
Yes.
You have to first switch your mindset and then realize how highly elevated Argentina is. And so for me, Argentina, what they're doing with Pinot Noir, I've been fortunate to taste some from, Catena in different projects.
Bodega Chakra.
And when you start tasting and understanding Argentine Pinot Noir, that is still to me like it's a region that I'm still learning and I'm excited to learn about for Pinot Noir.
Well, so much of it's not being exported. I went down there a couple years ago and I had the same experience. We started tasting all of these Pinots from all over Argentina, but specifically in Patagonia, and it was exactly that. It was like, oh, like this is a crazy high elevation where you're not getting like pretty much anywhere else in the world, and these Pinots just. You think of Malbec when you think of Argentina, you don't think of Pinot, and it was such a crazy juxtaposition to have two wildly different wines from the same country. The same country,
and what they're doing with Pinot, and is I think Pinot is really great Pinot is really hard to make.
Yes,
and I think to get the consumer to understand Pinot Noir from Argentina when it's been so much about Malbec is where like you can actually have fun when you go wine shopping.
Yeah.
It's like picking like, oh, this is different and I want to keep enjoying it. So that's where I'm excited to have it from more. What about you?
Germany.
Oh yeah.
I'm actually going to be going in a couple months, weeks. I don't know where we are right now, but yeah, we just had Jenna Fields from the German Wine Collection on, and we were talking about German Pinot Noir. But even before that, someone who's a vintner in Napa Valley was like, oh, it's just in Germany, had these incredible Pinot Noirs.
Yes, they do.
Nobody's exporting them. And the more that I taste, the more I'm like, there's some serious value here, and there's some great wines coming out of Germany.
And Austria.
In general, and Austria.
And Austria, too.
Yeah. That have me really, really excited. And I think, if there's one takeaway from this podcast, obviously, like, drink more Pinot, but also, we've talked about place more than producer. Like, we haven't really talked about producers at all. And
I'm purposeful on that.
But I think that speaks to the grape, though, right?
Yeah.
Like I think when you talk about Pinot Noir, if you want to taste great Pinot, you have to get as specific as you can with the place and taste from all over the world.
You taste from all over the world. I think when you focus so much on just a producer, it's limiting yourself and the enjoyment of that. Because that producer, like, that's great that they make that, and that I love that you enjoy that. But I'm a naturally curious person.
Yeah.
So I think wine is the ultimate curiosity box that you can play in.
I agree.
And that's to me is it's like, yes, I have my faves that I'm gonna keep going back to, but I challenge myself. Like every time I try a new producer. Or I'm also looking at I look at what you're drinking. Like sometimes I just go on your page and I'm just like screenshot. And I do that so when I walk into a store, I can say, oh, can you have that? Can I get this? Or can you, order it for me? So I stay curious as in my wine journey as well. Cause it continues on. It just doesn't stop because we work in the business. No. And I think about that all the time. Like how can I throw in like a Pinot in my work in wine all the time from a different place?
No, it's a fun thing to do, to just kind of shop around the world and then look to see what other people are.
Oh my God, yes. I mean, sometimes, if you, I don't know if people still use a hashtag to search things on social. I do. But if you search like Pinot Noir, like it's German, it's all people that are from other parts of the world that have had it. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of, let me I keep a note on my phone for different things and I screenshot. So if I'm like looking for German Pinot Noir, I'm like, okay, I remember the person talking about this, but I wish we did, import more of it because it's really hard to find.
It is hard to find. Well, especially like across the country, it's, we here in the U.S. we've got
we got so many issues.
50 different countries that are operating under 50 different sets of laws. But it's true, and I think you're right. Like I think if more Pinots from all over the world could be brought in, even from places that we haven't talked about. There's like tiny little regions that are producing Pinot that we're never going to see. But it is one of those grapes that I think you can have fun with and experiment with. And generally, like if someone's making Pinot, like they're gonna do their best to like make sure it reflects the place.
I think Pinot Noir is a winemaker's ungettable get. I think it's their whale, like in Moby Dick. I think it is the one grape that if you talk to most winemakers who make another grape, they always want to make a Pinot Noir. They always want to make one.
I think you're right.
Yeah, so it's their whale. They are really trying to make a Pinot Noir.
I never thought about it, but it is like, in some of my seminars that I've done before, you've met my mom, so you can probably attest to this. I've talked about Pinot Noir as like my mom on the beach. It's like the most fickle grape.
Yes.
And it's just never quite comfortable. And so my mom, the analogy is basically like, we go to the beach. My mom gets to the beach and she's like, it's too hot. So my dad has put up the umbrella and she's like, great. And she's like, now I'm a little too cold. So he used to like shift her slightly out so she does get a little sun. And she's like, I wish there were a breeze. And my dad's like, cue the breeze. And the breeze comes by. And that's like Pinot Noir in a nutshell, right? Like it's just never quite comfortable. And I think you're right in that it's the ungettable get for winemakers.
It's the ungettable get.
Like it's just never gonna be exactly the way that they want it to be, I think.
Never. It's never. I think it's the one great for winemakers that they just can't wrap their brain completely around what is happening, and it's the challenge, and that's why I call it the ungettable get.
It keeps changing. I'm very excited about it. New Zealand Pinot. I'm also excited about Australian Pinot, Mark, in case you're watching. I'm getting very angry and upset right now, but there's a whole world of Pinot inside of this grand tasting. I am gonna take you guys who are staying with me on YouTube, I'm gonna take you guys around to show you a few different producers that I'm excited about, both from California and from around the world. If you happen to spot any,
I'll let you know.
Tip me off.
I will tip you off.
Did you end up trying the Haliotide last night by chance?
No, but I know I'm gonna try today. Like, it was one of those, I think, like I was trying to get it and then somebody turned me around and then finally I was like, oh my God, Amanda told me to try this.
It's so good.
And so, yeah, but I think they're here today.
I think they are too, yeah. Actually, it's here that I discovered them. It was either last year or the year before. It's this great producer, super boutique. All they do is sparkling wine, or at least they did at the time when I tried them. But they had them at the party last night. I was very excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, and great producers last night.
I mean, it's always like one of those things, these kind of festivals and things are a great way to try so many producers that you actually sometimes can't get in your state, and they are here, right? And they're talking about, I was in the seminar Pinnacle of Pinot Noir, right? And you're of West Coast. 10 different wines, so different, all from West Coast. Yeah. And just, you see how the evolution. Yeah. You're seeing like ones that are literally 6 miles apart, completely opposite, same year, winemaking styles with that too. But the enjoyment is off the charts.
It's crazy, also super delicious. And I'm very excited to taste around the world. And to your point, I think festivals are a great place to taste lots of things, especially when you're in a wine region.
When you're in a wine region already.
Like you can spend a few days here, even outside of the festival. And I mean, we're 30 minutes from like a vineyard probably at this point?
Yeah, 30 minutes. And I mean, multiple vineyards. Yeah. Multiple vineyards, right? And just if you're familiar with this Santa Barbara, this Central Coast, I mean, you could spend days here and still not discover everybody.
Yeah. And you could eat really
good food out here. Oh gosh, it's really great.
What are some of your favorite restaurants in the general area? Do you have any?
Bettina, of course.
For pizza.
And
my girl loves her pizza. I love it.
I just sometimes I just want easy food because like traveling to Europe, like I travel to Europe a lot, and in Europe is always like a lot of fanciful food, right? And sometimes I'm just
You're always on the verge of a gout outbreak of some sort.
Yeah, I'm just like, I just need a green juice and something kind of simple to eat. So when I come to California, I'm just trying not to make it fussy. It's like, something, also great produce out here. So it's always a great salad. It's always a great time. And so, that's one of those. It's just, I don't get out here enough. Coming from the East Coast is just,
I get it. Yeah. I'll throw some recommendations out. So if you're going to come out to Santa Barbara, do some tasting, hopefully go to the World of Pinot, which happens in late February, early March of every year. So we stay at the Baccara, which is very lovely.
Lovely.
And this is where the whole event is. But about 15 minutes is like downtown Santa Barbara. We went to Loquita last night.
How was it?
Phenomenal. Okay. I had been there a couple years ago. It's Spanish tapas, but like it's like the perfect blend of high-low, and that it's like, tapas are very simple, but when they're executed at that level, there's like nothing quite like a pan con tomate with like a little sherry or like iberico ham, or they do like a paella. And you can eat rich, you can eat light. There's lots of things to do.
How was the wine list?
I had a sherry flight.
You had a sherry flight, I get it.
And they had such a great vermouth selection that I did a vermouth on the rocks with.
But even if somebody wanted to order wine and they didn't want to order sherry, that's where you can play, right? You go to a restaurant like that, one set of tapas, you have one wine, another set of tapas, the paella, you have another wine.
Yes.
So
Yeah, tons of great options. I think if you want to eat a little more classically California and you want to dig into the wine scene here, I would definitely recommend doing, it's a little bit of a drive, but I recommend it. About 45 minutes north of here is Bell's.
Oh yeah, Bell's.
In Los Alamos, and I think they have a Michelin star.
They do have a Michelin.
This very like it almost looks like Calistoga like 50 years ago. It's like uninhabited, but it's this great restaurant that is totally worth the drive.
Yeah, also get the reservation early.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes,
You have to, like, it's not one of those like pop in.
No, even though it's in this like very small town, it's not that. But I think that's a great example of very classic California food where Pinot Noir, I mean, Pinot Noir can shine in so many different moments, but I think that's a great moment where you can really let it
let it loose. Yeah,
I agree. Julia, where are you these days? You're doing so much. I can't keep track.
I live on a plane. As my husband says all the time, when he's like, where does she live? And people like, what? And he's like, she lives on a plane. I'm between DC, Houston, and a little tiny town in Louisiana because I'm a caregiver also. So I'm bouncing around. I am the wine expert for American Airlines. So I choose all the wines for the planes and the lounges.
Love that.
Which is a lot of fun. I do a lot of consumer-facing events, like US Whale festivals and things like that. And so mainly, I am back to writing mainly for my newsletter, which is called Métier, which is métier means a study that someone is good at, and so I just talk about wine in a fun way, and I usually put like where I've been, and I like it because I have like free stuff for people and also paid. So like my champagne recaps of the trip, I plan for people, that is like on there as well. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's just getting back to writing to make people want to drink. Like, what am I drinking at this moment?
Yeah. Pinot Noir, apparently, and lots of champagne.
Lots of champagne.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Well, here's the thing. I have to say that all
right.
I drink a lot of bubbles, and
fair.
I drink also a lot. I do drink a lot of California bubbles. I do drink a lot of champagne, and the reason why is I'm always thinking about that region and what it is. So I don't go and like try to say this sparkling wine from California. It's like this champagne from here. Because when I'm in Champagne and I'm trying different champagne from different places, I am like, this is so different.
Right.
And so I'm just trying to keep it all kind of like separate in my mind. And for me, what is going on, especially if I drink vintage champagne.
Right.
What was happening that year. So for me, I like bubbles. I do.
I love that you love bubbles. You are always the person that I go to for all things bubble advice, and I appreciate it. You can also find Julia on Instagram.
Yes.
At Julia Coney.
Julia Coney on all social.
We're going to go drink some more wine.
We drink some more Pinot.
Without you guys.
Sorry.
But if you're watching or listening to this, the wine we were drinking today was a 2021 Dog Point Pinot Noir from Marlborough, New Zealand. It was delicious and it was part of the wine club. If you're not a member of the Wine Access Unfiltered Podcast Wine Club, which I can never get out in one full sentence, you can find everything you need to join in the description below. Stay with me if you're on YouTube. We're going to go circle the grand tasting and see what that's all about to give you guys a little recap of the world of Pinot. And until next time, cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Clink. Hello from beautiful Santa Barbara. We are here at the World of Pinot Noir, and I'm going to take you on a little spin around this place because, one, it's beautiful. Two, all of the Pinot, it's right behind me there. So let me take you through and show you what this is all about. The grand tasting happens twice this weekend, and it's always such a fantastic place to discover new producers. I made a beeline to the Wines of Australia table because honestly, this is some of the most exciting Pinot and sparkling that is coming out right now. I love House of Ares. It was a discovery last year and it remains a favorite today. 2 doors down, we had Sandy, which is a favorite from Santa Barbara. And then this was a new discovery for me. I loved this Madsen coming from the Santa Cruz Mountains. This really was dynamite and kind of my favorite new discovery of the weekend. Popped over to say hi to Michael Fay from Domaine Serene, Costa Brown, a classic, Talbot, another classic. And then I had to say hi to Seppi. This is an all sparkling wine producer coming from Kelsey Phelps, who's the granddaughter of Joseph Phelps. And then, of course, I headed out for a little snack from Edo Pasta Bar in Paso Robles. Their pasta is delicious, and so is this setting, which I really couldn't get enough of. And then, of course, I bumped into you-know-who, Julia Coney and friends, as we said goodbye to another glorious weekend here at the World of Pinot Noir in Santa Barbara. Cheers till next time.